Okay, welcome back to Remote Workday. I have Toni here with me today. Toni, how are you doing? Your background is making me hungry.
Thank you. I'm doing well. It's actually my company background, Cloud Kitchens, as you can see over my shoulder.
Oh, I
Um,
want a little cheese.
yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh, tell us a little bit about Cloud Kitchen. What does your company do?
Cloud Kitchens, they refer to ghost kitchens. And what my company does specifically is we find spaces that have been abandoned and we repurpose them to turn them into facilities that host kitchens. And these kitchens are delivery only. So, as you can imagine, we've been very busy during this pandemic.
Yeah.
Business is booming in every market around the world as, people have had to pivot from dining in to takeout.
Yeah, I mean it's probably increased significantly the demand for that in the last year. And
Yes.
so well, tell us like a little bit about your backstory as well outside of just what you do now. How did you get into practicing law and working on immigration law? How did you get up to this point in your life?
Sure. Well, my grandparents on my mother's side, they were both attorneys. My grandfather, he's passed away now, but he was a retired judge in the Philippines. And my grandmother was one of the first female tax attorneys in the Philippines.
Wow.
Yes. And so she, while my parents were working, I was mainly raised by my grandmother. And I've just always had the inclination to follow in her footsteps.
Wow, that's so you've always kind of known since you
Yeah.
were a child that you wanted to do this. Wow,
Yes.
that's pretty awesome. So how long have you been practicing law now? Has it always been immigration law? And how has your career evolved since you got your degree?
Yes. I have no idea how many years I've been practicing law.
No worries, no worries. I feel like this
Okay.
last year has made our lives just meld together.
Yeah. So I graduated from law school in 2013. So I took a year off in between so I could study for the LSAT and figure out where I wanted to go to law school. So I ended up in law school in DC. And while I was in DC, my focus was on property and tax, actually.
Interesting. Okay.
So, my very first legal internship was with the CFO of the DC government.
Oh,
Yeah. And
mm,
then after that, I interned with federal bankruptcy court.
got it.
So I've had that. I started off with a government background and in tax. And then once I moved back to California, I kind of switched into the startup tech space.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it makes
this
a lot of sense. Mhm.
Yeah. So this is, I would say, I believe this is the fourth tech startup that I've worked for. And usually the other tech startups that I've worked for have been relatively small. So I've had to wear a lot of hats. I've had to also do HR and payroll. And this is actually my very first stint in immigration.
Wow.
So
And how long have you been with Cloud Kitchens?
I've been with Cloud Kitchens for almost 2 years, actually 2 years, first week of June.
Well, what a crazy last year and a half, 2 years to be in immigration law.
Yes.
I mean, okay, so as we know, it's been a crazy year for the world, and the immigration policies and laws have changed almost what daily, weekly. How
Yes.
has your job shifted? And how has it been in general, just having to deal with such a like all the frequent changes in the policies?
Right. So I feel like the first year doing this job, it was very cut and dry. Either you qualify for a work visa or you don't. And it's pretty black and white. There are a few things that are in the gray area, but for the most part, everything's cut and clear. And this past year has been not that at all. Everything is in the gray area. And another thing that has been very difficult for immigration is are all of the border closures. So, people being unable to travel from, for example, there's a travel ban between Europe and the US right now. And so, what that means is that people cannot fly directly from any of the European countries into the US.
Mhm.
So, you would have to fly to a different country, maybe Turkey or someplace in South America, spend
Mhm.
14 days to bypass the travel ban, and then fly to the US.
Wow, that's interesting. And how does this affect your job?
It affects my job. Well, so in immigration, every single case is different. So
Mhm.
there's no one case that fits a particular mold. Every case has some different thing about it. And going back to your last question, I think in the last year, a lot of my job has also been to reassure people that to kind of play, I don't want to say therapist, but to really hold somebody's hand in that immigration process,
Mhm.
because there has been so much worry and doubt.
I could see how you would have to be that person for someone that's probably trying to come here to work.
Yes. So typically I assist people who are already here in the US on a work visa of their own. And so I would just switch over or transfer their visas. And the predominant ones are H1B, that's your typical work visa. Then there are E3s, which are work visas for Australians, and TNs, which are work visas for Canadians and Mexican nationals.
Interesting. So
Now,
this,
it's been
yeah,
it's been very difficult for people to get brand new visas.
in
So
the
that
past year specifically.
yes, yes,
Well, from what I recall, I mean, getting work visas in general is pretty difficult.
yes.
It's could you explain that process a little bit? I remember one of the last companies I worked for, we had an engineer that had to go through this process of it was almost like a random draw,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
And he just never got it for like the 5 years at the company. He just worked remotely in China because he just every year he just never got the, I guess, that draw or that bid.
right. So I mentioned those three countries earlier, Australia, Mexico, and Canada, because the US has specific trade laws with them, where we easily and freely give of those three countries as long as they qualify. So, if you are a graduate, like let's say a software engineer out of Canada and you want to work in the US, it's no problem to get the work visa.
I
Now,
see.
for the rest of the world, the only other work visa option is the H1B, which you were just talking about.
Mm,
So, as I mentioned previously, for immigrants from other countries that are coming from any other country other than Mexico, Canada, and Australia, they have to get an H1B visa, and these are very difficult. So difficult to attain.
mhm.
So every year, there are about 200,000 people in
Mhm.
the US that apply for these H1Bs, but
Mhm.
there's only 65,000 available. So,
Oh, so the percentage is pretty low.
yes.
What are the requirements? How's the process of all of that?
So the main requirement is that somebody needs to have a college level degree. So in other countries they have college equivalency. It has to be something to equivalent to U.S. educational standards. So
Mhm.
as long as they have a secondary degree, and there are a few majors that qualify,
Mhm.
typically for STEM, which are
Okay,
majors in the sciences.
right.
So if somebody has a degree in business management, unfortunately, they would not. That degree does not qualify for an H1B. It has to be very specialized. So
Mm,
typically, software engineers apply for this. Um, people in design, architects.
Mhm.
Um, so what happens is every April 1st, there's a lottery. And as I mentioned, about 200,000 people enter this lottery, then only 65,000 are selected. So you
Mm,
have a 1 in 3 chance of selection every year.
got
And
it.
the lottery only happens once a year. So this year happened April 1st. Now, because of COVID and things being difficult for employers, we last year there was an additional lottery
Mhm.
in August, so a few more
Oh,
names were selected. So once your name is selected, now you have a chance to apply for that H1B. Now you have to actually put the visa application together, and at that point, you can either be rejected or approved.
right, right. Interesting. So where do you fit in this whole process at Cloud Kitchens? Are you helping assist potential employees of of the company, or are they already employees of the company that are trying to come to the US?
Okay, so where I fit in particularly is with the people team and recruiting. So, what happens is a recruiter signs on a candidate, and if they need visa support, then I will initiate the visa transfer. So, I work with outside counsel on the cases that are a little more difficult. And essentially, I am the liaison between the candidate, the recruiter, and outside counsel to transfer these visas.
I see. I see.
And I'm the only person in a company of 1,285 employees that
Oh my gosh.
handles visa and immigration. So it's
So
been
you've been busy this last year. There has been a shift in administration in 2021. Have the policies loosened up a bit because of that shift? And has it loosened up because now the vaccine is out in the US? What are you seeing there in terms of the changes since from 2020 to 2021?
unfortunately, not a lot of changes yet. I think that, Biden just went into the office in January,
Mhm.
but I don't think that he's had time to reverse all of Trump's policies. And I also think that he is taking his time to see what will happen with COVID and the vaccine rollout. So, unfortunately, not much has changed. There's definitely been an attitude shift to the government is now a little more friendly, I guess, towards immigrants, and that can be seen in DACA, where
Mhm.
yeah, that's one positive change from the Biden administration. I'm hoping and waiting that he'll lift some of those travel restrictions that we were just talking about,
Mhm.
because that's made it's been extremely difficult for people to freely, as to
Yeah.
freely move between here and Europe. We have now, there's a travel ban in place with India, and
Yeah.
so
I heard.
unfortunately, I now have two candidates that are stuck in India, and I don't know if we'll
Um,
get them back anytime soon.
oh my gosh. Wow. It must be so hard for the candidates, but also hard for you because you're personally directly dealing with
Yeah.
people that are trying to get into the States. Wow. Do you see, I don't know if you can answer this question, like major differences between immigration within other countries versus the US in the last year? Or has it kind of been similar? Have other countries also been like, hey, we're just gonna like hold off, we're gonna close the travel borders and wait this out?
I would say that it's been similar. It's been
Mhm.
similarly difficult to
Yeah.
get visas across the board. I just, I have a visa right now that's on the verge of being denied in Hong Kong.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, then there was one in Japan. So, and all of the immigration rules per country are so different and so tricky.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
So,
probably extra tricky in this last year too because of all the added policies because of COVID.
Yes, I can tell you that across the board, everything has been delayed. I don't think I've had one case where the visa was approved in a time frame that was shorter than I expected.
Wow. And does Cloud Kitchens have offices all over the world, or are you just dealing with US based employees?
So, I guess my priority is US based visas, but I also handle immigration across the world. So,
Wow.
I tend to delegate the visas in the different regions just because there's only one of me and I cannot learn immigration law in every single country. Although I can tell you that I'm now well versed in immigration law in Korea,
Oh,
Japan. Uh,
interesting, because you had to learn it on the
yeah,
job.
yeah. So what happens is we'll have an employer or a candidate that needs to go into a particular country.
Mhm.
And, when they need assistance, they turn to me. And even if I don't know the answer, I have to figure it out.
Wow. That's I mean, it seems like you're learning a lot on the job, which is not a bad thing, but it also sounds extremely stressful considering how understaffed you are.
Yes, yes. And, you and I had conversations a
Mhm.
few weeks ago about the turmoil that's happening in my company right now.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, just hang in there. I feel like a lot, I mean, I'm sure multiple, multinational companies are dealing with the same issues because you just don't know the uncertainty of
Yeah,
the policies and what's going on. And
yeah.
I mean, where do you even keep up to date on all these new policies that just keep coming?
Oh, I mean, honestly, the only thing I can do is look up the law at that point when I'm trying to help somebody
Mm,
move to a different country.
got it. Got it. And do you have any advice for people that are trying to get work visas into the US since that's your specialty? Do you have, I mean, outside of, like you said, the education that they need, the
Mhm.
background, like what else would someone need, or how can they stand out? Or is it just luck of the draw, the 1 in 3 chance?
So it's the luck of the draw for the H1B.
Mhm.
Um, that's an interesting question because one thing that I want to stress is that the visas that I work on are work visas and work sponsored. So if an employer hires you, then they will deal with your visa
Got it.
situation,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you come from a country that's, not that's not Mexico, Canada, or Australia, it's extremely difficult. And the story that you were mentioning earlier,
Mhm.
I think I might have mentioned this to you, but one of our employees is a Hong Kong national,
Uh-huh.
and she was on a student visa and we put her name in the H1B lottery twice. Unfortunately, she was not selected. So we had to move her to Canada because,
Like a Canadian office.
yes,
Yeah, I
yes, we
see.
have a Canadian office.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, it's just that luck of the draw and,
Mhm.
being picked because, there's some people that this year I put their names in the first time and they were selected. And then there are other people who put their names down every year and they haven't been.
So interesting. Wow. It's just like a lottery at that
It
point.
is.
It's a
It
luck.
is a lottery, unfortunately.
Wow. Well, I hope that, work gets a little less stressful now that we are slowly coming out of the pandemic. And hopefully we don't hit another massive wave of COVID,
Yes.
in the fall or winter, knock on wood. But I do want to also, ask how it's been now that you're working remotely, because you used to be going to your downtown office, right?
Yes.
How's it been just working from home?
It's been great. Well, there's the aspect that I love, which is no commuting.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
But then, there are all the other there are other issues that I'd have to deal with that I wouldn't have to deal with before. such as the power going out or my internet going out. I've definitely been on conference calls, even international conference calls, where all of a sudden the internet went out.
Oh
And
no.
and there was nothing I could do about it. Or all of a sudden the gardener goes by, or you hear a dog, and it's just so,
Like, sorry.
yeah, exactly. There's nothing you can really do about that. So, I mean, but I think that those challenges are pretty minimal, and I've actually really enjoyed working from home. Our office has stayed open.
Oh,
As well, I guess I didn't mention this, but our company, because of the nature of the company and what we do, we were labeled an essential company.
mm,
So our office is never closed.
that's
Um, our employees have the option of going to the office. I just choose not to. So I
amazing.
can take my Zoom calls in my pajamas, which is my preference.
Of course, way more comfy, that's for sure. So, what is the future look like for cloud kitchens? Are they going to allow employees to work, remotely if they like after the pandemic, or is it going to be some type of hybrid structure? Has the company discussed this at all?
Yes. So the head of HR is actually my direct manager. And so I've spoken with her about this a few times. And the company is just going to make it optional. We have a lot of employees that have different health conditions, a few that are pregnant. So it just doesn't make any sense to mandate going back to the office, especially when a lot of these jobs can be done remotely with no issue.
Mhm.
So it will be our company policy, at least for the next few months, that going to the office is optional.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of companies are allowing that. And how interesting, right? I mean, in a traditional job as an attorney, you have, generally speaking, a very traditional 9 to 5 job. But because of the pandemic, it's really shifted the way you can work, which
Yeah.
is very cool, you know?
Yeah.
Because I do talk about remote work, and I'm a huge believer in it if you can, work remotely. Well,
Definitely.
that's amazing. And does your company provide you anything for your home office, or just support of any sort when you're on the go or not in the office?
What do you mean by
So do
is
they give you like a stipend
oh,
to buy a monitor, to have like a more ergonomic desk at home? Like, do they provide anything for you for your home office?
yes, they could if I wanted to. I just chose not to. I have a huge monitor at work. I just chose not to bring it.
Got
So
it.
it'll
Got
sit.
it. You're like, we're just gonna keep it on my laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you see yourself doing this for, the next 5, 10, 20 years? Like, where do you see yourself personally?
Yes, I really like what I do. I've done one thing I didn't mention is before this I was in-house for Proactive, the acne skincare solution. So I was doing advertising law, and I've had many different legal jobs, and with this one in particular, I've actually had the ability to help people, and my help has been so tangible and rewarding. So that's the one thing that I really enjoy about my job. Even though it's very crazy, every person that I help with a visa is so grateful.
Oh,
And so it's actually I help people every day, and
mhm.
it's definitely been worthwhile. And because of that, I do plan to continue in this line of work. I don't know if I'll stay with this particular company for the foreseeable future, but I definitely want to continue with immigration law.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, that's actually a beautiful ending to the story of the pandemic for you, because offline, I know how crazy it's been for you in this last year and the stress you've gone through. But, ultimately in the end of the day, I guess it's worth it because you're helping so many people. That's amazing. That's amazing. So for viewers that want to learn a little bit more about immigration law, how can they contact you?
Um, I can you can give out my personal email, Audrey. You have
Okay.
it.
Yep. Yep. I'll add it to the comments below.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm I'm
Perfect.
always more than happy. If somebody has any questions or inquiries about immigration, I'm more than happy to have a chat, talk to help them through the process. I know that immigration is such a tricky and stressful thing. And, as an immigrant myself, I can definitely empathize.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Toni. That was so insightful. Hang in there. I feel like we're almost out. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully it's less crazy and less stressful when a lot of these policies are lifted.
Yes, yes. I'm just hoping that, once borders open again and once the vaccine is rolled out more, we'll slowly return to normalcy, like with everything else, but especially with immigration.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Toni. I will see you
Sure.
soon. Bye.